welcome to episode number 125 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio. I am Jason Finelli, the video game insider for Cheesesteaks for Fox PHL The Gambler. Sorry, I'm excited about the Eagles. It's Super Bowl week, baby. We have that's all I've been thinking about all week. Oh, wait, 1 second, sorry. Had to make sure we heard that there. Oh my goodness, is it an exciting time to be an Eagles fan. Super Bowl 57 coming up this Sunday, 6:30. I would be lying if I said I haven't thought about it every waking moment since probably Wednesday afternoon. I am very, very hype for this game this weekend. And we are going to get into a couple of things about football and video games later on in the show. I'll go over my favorite football games of all time. And then at the very end, we will do the official Cheesesteaks and Controllers Madden 23 Super Bowl 57 simulation and see if it differs at all from the EA Sports official Madden simulation that came out earlier in the week. But before we do any of that, I would like to start with one of my favorite things to come from the first month of the year. Tends to happen around the same time, February. It's Nintendo Direct time. Nintendo once again graced us with a Nintendo Direct earlier this week, and I'm going to go through all of the big things that happened during that. Had a great showing. They really did. Had a lot of stuff that I really, really thought was worth talking about here. The first and foremost, honestly, if we're going to get into what is probably the biggest news of the show, that is the Metroid Prime Remaster. Metroid Prime Remastered, Metroid Prime from 2002, came out for the GameCube, one of the most highly regarded games of all time. I believe it was multiple Game of the Year award winner in that year. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it snagged at least a few overall Game of the Years from the big sites of the time. It is back on Nintendo Switch. In fact, it is already back. It shadow dropped at the end of the Nintendo Direct presentation on Wednesday night, which is awesome. Have not had a chance to jump in myself yet. Had a couple other things I had to take care of, but from what I understand, it is a very good remaster of what was already a very good game. I'm seeing 90s and 95s across the internet, so hopefully I'll be able to dig into that soon once the Super Bowl hangover is over. I do appreciate them shadow dropping it, but maybe a week's notice would have been nice or something like that, because personally I don't think I'm going to get a chance to play it until next week as it is. But that was not the only information that came out from this Nintendo Direct. We saw the first footage of Pikmin 4. Honestly, some folks might have forgot Pikmin 4 even existed after it was announced back in September's Nintendo Direct, sort of in passing, right? We only saw like the logo for Pikmin 4, and Miyamoto himself came out to talk about it. But other than that, there hasn't been any mention since. But this was our first look at footage, our first look at in-game content, gameplay, stuff like that. We saw familiar faces. We saw brand new characters. We saw a brand new dog-type creature that will be helping us out throughout the game, which is cool. First time, I think, ever, maybe, that Pikmin has let you use animals, or has let you interact in a positive way with animals that weren't Pikmin. Most of the time, the big bad guys you see are trying to eat your Pikmin. This time, we have a little helpful dog boy, which is pretty cool. Another big announcement for me from this Nintendo Direct was the introduction of Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games to the Nintendo Switch's online offerings. The online little arcade thing that they have with regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, has now added 2 different generations of the Game Boy. If you just have the standard Nintendo Switch Online, you get access to the Game Boy. If you have the expansion pack, you get access to Game Boy Advance as well. A couple of classic titles coming out right in this first run. You have Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. You have on the Game Boy Advance side, I think you have Super Mario Advance 4, which is a remake of Super Mario Brothers 3. Always one of the most confusing things I've ever heard. But like Link's Awakening DX is on the Game Boy side. Minish Cap is on the Game Boy Advance side, plus games that I don't know even made it to America, and if they did, in limited supply, like the first-party game Kuru Kuru Kururin, which is an interesting little challenge game where you have this like this long aircraft, I guess, and it's like in a straight line, and you have to navigate it through this maze without touching any walls. Interesting little challenge game too, because honestly, that's one of the things I like the most about the online, like virtual console classic game things that they do on the Switch. While a lot of times what they introduce is, you know, the main titles like Mario games and Zelda games and stuff like that, every once in a while they'll throw in a couple of games you may not have remembered from yesteryear, like the Game Boy lineup from this Nintendo Direct had Gargoyle's Quest, where you play as Firebrand from the Ghost and Goblin series. This one had the previously mentioned Kuru Kuru Kururin. And the games that are coming to the service kind of follow that sort of thought process as well. The old Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy Color is coming to the service. Golden Sun for Game Boy Advance is coming to the service. So hopefully it'll reignite some passions for these older games, and maybe we'll get a new Golden Sun out of it or something like that. Super, super cool stuff. Totally dig that. New DLC coming for Splatoon 3, which was to be expected, obviously. It was a huge success for them back in September. But going back to the original hub world of Ingopolis from the very first Splatoon, that was pretty cool. The second wave, however, Side Order, I think is going to be more interesting inherently. It looks like it's more story DLC, and it's a world that's completely bereft of all of its color. It's all black and white, like dull cream colors, excuse me. So that'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on, especially if you're a Splatoon fan. And then the big anchor at the end of the show, no surprise to anyone, was Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom getting a new trailer ahead of its May 12th launch date. I imagine that we will get some sort of Zelda-focused presentation, a Zelda Direct between now and that launch date, just going over like new mechanics or things like that. If we don't, that might be a slight signal that something might be up with this game. Like if it's just, you know, if it's not as revolutionary as the first one will be, which that's a huge bar to have to clear, right? That first game was transformative. The number of games that have tried to copy that since is pretty astounding. So they have a high bar to clear. And I feel like a Zelda-focused presentation, maybe March or April time, will allow people to see what to expect from this new game and put in some confidence that it'll be more than just another Breath of the Wild, right? So some quick hitters from this show as well before we move on. The next expansion of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC was cool. Also a preview for Volume 4, which seems to tie in the entire series. Thought I saw Shulk and Rex there, which was interesting. Franchise I never thought I'd see again. Samba de Amigo Party Central brings Samba de Amigo back, an old maraca shaking rhythm game for the Sega Dreamcast. It's back on the Switch. That's pretty cool. Deca Police, an interesting like connected reality suspense like cop drama thing. Not exactly sure what's really going on there, but to see Level 5's logo was pretty cool. They kind of backed off of Western development for a while, so they seem to be coming back between this and two other games, which I'll mention one of them at least later on. Disney Illusion Island. This is one that I think could be an under the radar sort of hit, especially with like families and kids and stuff like that. 4-player Disney adventure game. You play as Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy in this Metroidvania style like platforming and backtracking and stuff like that. Each character has certain animations for their jumping and certain like hover. The hover animations are different. This is one that they highlighted in the video. Goofy uses like a big bottle of mustard that he squeezes to hover through the air, stuff like that. I just feel like there's what's going on with this game every time I see it is very, very interesting. And if the world design is tight and good, then I think this could be a surprise hit from the summer. I really do. So hoping D-Lala pulls that off. Can't wait to see what they have in store for us when that comes out in the summertime. We also saw the Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon, which apparently is playing less like traditional Bayonetta and more like Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, where you controlled two characters with one controller. Love that game. So if this new Bayonetta game can emulate Brothers in any way, I'm all in on that. Some returning games from the handheld eras of Nintendo. First, DS, Etrian Odyssey 1, 2, and 3 in one collection was an interesting ad. Never thought I'd hear those names again. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp is coming out this April after being delayed for what will be an entire year due to the conflict in Ukraine. Nice of them to wait a year to do that. Self-inflicted. They didn't have to, obviously, but to put the brakes on that game because of what was going on there. I understand why they did it. So April 21st for Advance Wars. And that was basically the big stuff. There were some other things that are worth, if you're into JRPGs, Baten Kaitos, which is an old GameCube series, is coming back. If you like Danganronpa, that studio's next game. Raincode was highlighted in this. The next wave of Mario Kart 8 DLC with a brand new track designed around Yoshi's Island. Very, very cool looking track there. But yeah, I thought this Direct was very, very good. And if you believe certain writers online, I may be alone in that. There was an article that went out on gamesindustry.biz, I think it was. It's time to kill the Nintendo Direct. No, it's not. Stop it. The article basically read as, I don't like these games, so this whole thing should go away. And that, frankly, is silly. I don't fawn over every game that's announced during these things. I have ones that excite me, and I have ones that I go, oh, cool. It's not for me. I won't play it, but it's cool that it's there. You know what I'm saying? But some people take that feeling of this game's not for me as this whole Direct needs to go away. I'm angry. It's not tailored exactly to me. And I think that's a little selfish. Is that the word? I think that's the word. Selfish. Obviously, no one is going to play every game ever made, so you look for the ones that you are the most interested in, and you use those as the highlights of the 40-minute presentation. Something for everyone. And quite frankly, 36 hours after it debuted, it had 4.3 million views and was still trending #1 across all of YouTube, so I don't think the Directs are going away anytime soon. Could they use a slight format change? Would it be nice if they went back to the weirdness of 2014 and 2015 where we had Muppets and Robot Chicken? Sure, I wouldn't mind a little variety in my Direct every once in a while, but they may still be trying to figure things out over there in Japan and Nintendo of America post-pandemic. They're trying to figure out what they're doing. They might not even be at E3 this year, as we talked about last week. So I'm not willing to throw in the towel on Nintendo Direct just yet. Kind of change the way that everybody presents their games. So if they want to keep doing what they're doing and maybe iterate, that's fine. But ultimately, the announcements of a new Nintendo Direct are still exciting, and clearly 4.3 million views in 36 hours. The fans are still into it as well. I don't see it dying anytime soon, and if I had to give a grade to this new one, I'd give it a solid B. So at least they're still doing what they're supposed to do, coming up into the end of the Switch's life cycle. Now, with Zelda coming out in May and Pikmin in August, they do have some holes to fill for the end of the year, where I imagine we'll hear more about that later on in the year. If they don't go to E3, I still expect some sort of June Nintendo Direct. We'll see what happens there. But ultimately, I think Nintendo and Nintendo Directs, I should say, are fine. I think they're fun little presentations, and I hope that they continue and don't die as that one writer wanted. So, moving on now, coming up after the break, I will dive into some of my favorite football games of all time, pro and college, before moving into the official Cheesesteaks and Controllers Madden 23 simulation of Super Bowl 57 between the Kansas City Chiefs and your Philadelphia Eagles. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 125, Super Bowl edition, Super Bowl 57 happening this weekend. Your Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's play the song once again. We are having fun on a Super Bowl Friday. Looking forward to everything happening this weekend. It's really hard for me to not think about this game and smile. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the Eagles are back in the Super Bowl. Maybe because I still feel the greatness of 5 years ago. I don't know what it is, but man, am I excited to see what goes on this Sunday. But let's talk about football in this realm that I talk about every single week. Video games. Football and video games go back pretty far, actually. Football games have been out since as early as 1973, 72 on the Magnavox Odyssey. Talk about a console right there. But we're going to go a little ahead in the timeline to talk about my favorite football games of all time. Now, obviously, these are going to be centered around the years, like, let's say 90, 91 up until today. I'm not going to talk about entire franchises, right? Like, I'm going to talk about Madden, but I'm going to talk about one Madden game that sticks out in my mind, and I'll explain why. I'll talk about other franchises that are long-time football games, especially classic football franchises that I have played throughout my life. But let's get right into it. So the first football game I ever played on a console is one that, if I say the name, a lot of people will agree with me is an absolute classic. Now, it's one that has a little bit of controversy surrounding it, I think, and not because it's a bad game or anything like that. It's not. But I think because some people will say it's one game that's better, or one version of the game that's better versus the other. So the one that I go to, if this makes sense, is not the one that other people go to. And that is, for me, Tecmo Super Bowl. Now, Tecmo Super Bowl featured the entire NFL, 32 teams. It's the one where you see all the clips of Bo Jackson and QB Eagles and stuff like that. Longtime listeners of the show may recognize this song from the 6 in 60 seconds news hits I used to do and stopped doing inexplicably. But I always liked this game more than Tecmo Bowl just because it offered the entire league, right? It had the entirety of the NFL, all 30 teams at the time. I think I said 32, but the Jaguars and the Panthers weren't around yet when this game came out. And I liked being able to play as any of the teams in the league that I wanted to. I liked being able to, riff. I simulated a lot of seasons is what I did. So I would watch the season play out and see who wins at the end, hoping upon hope that the Eagles would be there in the finals, and they rarely were, because in 1991, while the defense was good, the offense was, outside of QB Eagles, not entirely good. It was always, the Giants or other teams of the era. The Eagles could never seem to break through. They'd win the division plenty of times, but they never actually win the big one in these simulations that I did. But I wasn't just simulating games either. Watching or playing the actual game was a lot of fun too. Picking the plays and running all up and down the field, especially as Bo Jackson, one of the best football players of all, video game football players of all time, as well as a very good real life football player as well. I loved playing this game. I would play hours upon hours of it when I was a kid. It was my introduction not only into football video games, but basically into football in general. And then eventually I would go from there. However, later on in life, as I played Maddens on Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and stuff like that, I started to pine for something a little more over the top, right? There was a game at the time called Mutant League Football, but that wasn't based in the real league, and it was fun, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Enter, in the arcades, I believe in 1998. I could be wrong about that. I could be ahead of myself. 1997, maybe. That would be NFL Blitz. Now, this took the classic game of football and turned it completely on its head. Quarterbacks could throw from one end zone to the other. The tackles were wrestling moves, pro wrestling moves. They weren't actual tackles. You could run into a player and send them flying into the stands. It was just an absolute madhouse and a ton of fun, especially in the arcades where you could have like up to 4 people, I think it was, on one machine, possibly even 6, depending on where you were, and everybody controlled a different player on the field. Again, not terribly complicated. They did change some basic rules of football to make more sense in this over-the-top scenario. First downs required 30 yards, not 10. So, as you can imagine, the final scores of games were astronomical. But that arcade sort of like cuckoo bananas, for lack of a better term, thank you, The Real Jim's on YouTube, approach to football made it a lot of fun. Like, it made you, basically, it was how I envisioned football players when I was a kid, right? They seemed like giants, monoliths, huge people. Blitz kind of played out in my like on a screen how I thought of football in my mind as a kid, seeing it for the first time. Just these giant dudes barreling over each other, scoring points and celebrating and stuff like that. Just a really smart, fun take on the sport of football. I love that Midway did this. I was also a fan of NBA Jam at the time, so to see a football version of that was super cool. But I think that this is one franchise I would love to see come back, and it's tried, right? Blitz has tried to come back a few times over the years, but it just hasn't been able to stick as well as it did. I think now the Blitz, the first NFL Blitz, is available via Arcade 1-Up arcade machine. That might be a lot of fun, but I don't know the next opportunity I'll get to play that. So that's a very cool game, very fun sort of product of the time, let's say. I don't know. Like I said, the new Blitz hasn't been able to really stick yet. We'll see if that changes in the future. But for now, if you have not played NFL Blitz, I would recommend you check that out somehow. Nintendo 64 had a version. PlayStation had a version. PS1. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend you check that game out. So then we're going to get to the great debate, right? Over the years, as far as football video games are concerned, basically 2 franchises stick out above the rest. One is the current one, the end-all, be-all, Madden, named for John Madden, longtime coach and broadcaster. A name as synonymous with football as it is video games is Madden. Comes out every year with different adjustments. Some people accuse it of being complacent because it doesn't really have any competition anymore. But it is the one that has survived. It is the one that is still here. It's not going anywhere. People are going to play Madden for as long as there's pro football. My favorite, or the one that I think so fondly of, and this is going to be a weird choice, I think, but I'll explain myself, I promise, is Madden 2006. And the reason I say that is for twofold. One, McNabb was on the cover, so of course, Homer. Got to pick the eagle on the cover. I get it. But secondly, this came out leading into my sophomore year of college, where I lived on Temple University's campus in a room with 5 other folks, five other dudes, in what was called Temple Towers, in those dorms, right on Cecil B. Moore Avenue, just off of Broad Street, in North Philly. And I just have a lot of very good memories of playing through Madden 06 with the boys, whether we were doing, franchise modes where we would take turns, or we were playing against each other, or I would be watching my one roommate just lose his mind because his beloved Giants weren't doing what he wanted them to do. And we were all Eagles fans, right? So he was losing his mind, and we were laughing at him because the Giants, are terrible. But that particular version of Madden, which I believe is considered sort of mid as far as the full franchise is concerned, but that one always makes me smile whenever I think of McNabb on the cover and the QB vision with the cone where that's where he's looking, so that's where you have to throw. Just a very weird mechanic, but that is one I always think about fondly, even if in the grand scheme of the entire franchise, it ain't all that great. Madden 06 is probably the one I appreciate the most. Granted, I still play it. I try and play it every year. I thought 23, which had a lot of problems in its online franchising stuff, but getting into a football game, the core football game, I thought was pretty good. It's there's no competition, so they are definitely complacent. Whether you think they are or not, they don't have to iterate because there's nothing in the market that says that they have to. If sales start to slow, then they'll start to iterate. But right now, they don't have to do that because it still sells like gangbusters. One thing I do want to point out about Madden 23, however, is the excellent, fantastic, wonderful John Madden tribute game where his favorite players on both offense and defense are in this curated AFC versus NFC one-off game. And all the announcers do is talk about John Madden and his legacy and the impact they've made on him and on the game and on the gaming industry. And there's like a video package paying tribute to him. It's just a wonderful, wonderful tribute. And I feel that anyone who has ever played Madden will appreciate it, even if that's, if you haven't played it for a while, just to jump back in and figure out what's going on. I recommend you check that out, even if you just watch it on YouTube, if you don't have access to a console and you played Madden before. It's really, really cool. But Madden 06, as I said, is probably the Madden I'll always think fondly because of my experience in college. But the other side of that coin of the argument that I talked about before I got into Madden 06 is NFL 2K, the indie darling, the lost NFL, NFL 2K5 with T.O. on the cover, widely considered to be one of the best football games ever made, and folks have been pining for a return ever since. They tried with All-Pro Football 2K8, but the lack of license meant lack of recognition, meant lack of overall sales. There have been a few other attempts here or there, but NFL 2K is something I think that is going to be by the wayside forever now, basically. It's just, I don't know. I liked NFL 2K2 on the Dreamcast. That was one that I had owned, and NFL 2K, just 2K on the Dreamcast as well. Both of those were super good. And 2K5 is worthy of all of its accolades. It's a fun, fun game. But I don't think it'll ever come back. I think EA's locked up that license, and it's not going anywhere, and it's going to be their cash cow forever. Now, there was something that came out that 2K and the NFL were working together again on some sort of other project, but as far as a football simulation by 2K under the 2K banner, I just don't see that happening ever again. And then finally, the last of my favorite football games. This one is sort of cheating, right? This isn't traditional football the way that you would like it to be played on a field with familiar teams. But it's in a football setting. And back in, 2014, 2015, I had never really played this game a whole lot, but some friends were organizing a league in it. So I thought, what the hell? I'll use this as my opportunity to check it out, see what everything's about, and see how the football is adapted into this new arena. And honestly, it was some of the most fun I've ever had playing games with friends. That's Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl 2 specifically was the one that we played in this league. But so Blood Bowl is a board game, essentially. It's more of a board game style than a football simulation where you're rolling die to see if you block other players or if passes are completed or if you score a touchdown, stuff like that. But the strategy around it and the luck of the draw, essentially, with the rolling of the die, and it's just a lot of fun. It's really, really cool. It's fun to watch your little dwarf guy knock over the goblin and then punch him when he's down and be allowed to do that. There are fouls, of course, but it's not like fouls where the flag is thrown in football for a guy going off sides or anything like that. No, you only get fouled if you crush a guy and knock him off the field. And when I say knock him off the field, I mean permanently. So the way this league worked was we built our roster, we named all of our characters, and if one of them died in the middle of a match, they were done. They didn't come back. We had to recruit a new one. Very interesting little wrinkle in this particular style of football. But yeah, it's different. I will definitely say it's different. It might not be for those purists out there who want the Madden-style football simulation. But if you're just looking for a different way to represent football with a bit of a fantasy, dark fantasy slant to it. Blood Bowl's awesome. And Blood Bowl 3 comes out in, 2 weeks? Comes out at the end of the month, so it might be another way to check this out for yourself. If whether you're waiting for 3 or if Blood Bowl 2 is out real cheap, check it out. See the different teams, see how they work, see how the strategy all implements itself. And I think you'll have a lot of fun, especially with the NFL season ending, XFL beginning. You might have a lull in your life for some football. Blood Bowl could scratch that itch. It'll just do so in a way that you may not recognize. But those are my favorite football games of all time. Tecmo Super Bowl, NFL Blitz, Madden NFL 06, NFL 2K. I didn't really pick a 2K, but 2K2, I guess, on Dreamcast would be my favorite. Played a lot of hours in that game. And then Blood Bowl, special mention to the current Madden with the John Madden tribute game. Mutant League Football on the Genesis, where your players were monsters instead of, they were literal monsters instead of figurative big hulking behemoths. But yeah, honestly, the sport of football has a decent track record in video games. I didn't even mention NCAA college football with NCAA 14, I think it was, being one of my favorites. That is supposedly coming back very soon. Haven't heard anything about it in a long time, but would be great to see NCAA football back on the field. College football in video games is sorely missed. And I would love to see that back. We'll see if that happens maybe this year or next year. But there you go. And those are also some games to play in the lead up to the Super Bowl at 6:30 on Sunday. If you want to scratch that itch before the game starts, load in Madden, download Blood Bowl, dig out your old NES and play Tecmo Super Bowl again. Whatever you want to do to get yourself ready for the Super Bowl on Sunday, video games can certainly help you with that. Coming up after the break, we will talk about the official Cheesesteaks Controllers Madden 23 Super Bowl 57 simulation. It was run last night. The stats have been gathered. And will it be different than the 31-17 Eagles victory that EA Sports themselves simulated earlier in the week? Stick around to find out. All right, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 125, the Super Bowl episode, Super Bowl 57 this weekend, EAGLES Eagles, but you knew that already. I don't have to tell you that. You know exactly what's coming this weekend. Very, very excited for that. But I could not wait for this Sunday and the game to play out. So I took it upon myself to say, EA Sports, I appreciate your simulation, your 31-17 Eagles victory, but I want to do it for myself. So last night, I loaded up Madden 23 on my Xbox, and I watched a Super Bowl 57 simulation between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles playing out from Glendale, Arizona. Wanted to see if lightning would strike twice, if Madden would stay consistent with their prediction of an Eagles victory in the Super Bowl. Did that happen? Let's find out. So, the game started pretty hot, if I'm being honest. There were 14 points on the board for your Philadelphia Eagles before Patrick Mahomes even stepped on the field. They drove down the field in the first quarter, chewed up half the clock, and scored a touchdown on a 45-yard Jalen Hurts touchdown with the Jake Elliott kick. And then on the ensuing kickoff, the ball was muffed, picked up by Kevon Wallace, and returned 14 yards for a touchdown. And before we could even blink, it was 14-0 Eagles in this Super Bowl 57 simulation. Very, very hot start for the Eagles. But after that, things started to calm down a little bit. We had a 3-yard run by the fullback of Kansas City, Michael Burton, to make it 14-7, only to then be answered by a drive of our own with Miles Sanders punching it in from 3 yards out to make it 21-7. Butker added a 55-yard field goal as the half expired to send it to the locker room, 21-10 Philadelphia. Moving on to the second half now, not as much scoring in the second half, 3 touchdowns total between the two teams. Jalen Hurts ran in for his second touchdown of the day in the third quarter, a 3-yard run. Miles Sanders followed that up with another touchdown in the fourth quarter, 2-yard run of his own. And then in what we call garbage time, with 11 seconds left in the game, Mahomes to Juju Smith-Schuster for 5 yards, ending up with the final score of the Philadelphia Eagles 35 and the Kansas City Chiefs 17 in this official Cheesesteaks and Controllers Super Bowl 57 simulation. I'm going to run down some stats here. Now, I will preface by saying, while I did try to make this simulation as realistic as possible as far as the settings and how the AI would work is concerned, these stats might seem a little low because they were 6-minute quarters, right? I didn't put full 15 minutes in there. I wanted to keep game flow as realistic as possible. Based on how it turned out, if I had done full 15-minute quarters, it would have been like 80 to 34 or whatever for the Eagles. So I felt like this was, even though the quarters were not as long, I felt as if this was a pretty accurate summation of what could happen during this game on Sunday. So if we go through the statistics of the game, total offense was 274 yards for the Eagles versus 247 for the Chiefs. 155 of those rushing yards were for the Eagles, while 215 of the 247 yards on offense for Kansas City were through the air. So the rushing attack for the Eagles obliterated the Chiefs' running attack 155 to 32. But the passing game of Kansas City did perform better than the Eagles, 215 to 119. But when you're running the ball like the Eagles were, I guess the passing yards can fall by the wayside. Not a big deal there. Total yards from offense, total offense was 274. Total yards, including kickoffs and stuff like that, doesn't really count. I'm not sure why they have that there. The big one for me, though, 2 big stats right here that I think make this entire game what it was. Turnovers. The Eagles in this simulation did not have a single turnover in the entire game. The Chiefs gave up 2 fumbles, one to make it 14-0 before Pat Mahomes even stepped on the field, and then Mahomes threw himself an interception as well. The Eagles defense made the difference in this simulation, which is what a lot of people have predicted may actually happen as well. They said that the Eagles defense is deep, one of the best, if not the best in the league, and it will be hard for any quarterback, let alone Mahomes, to kind of come over that. But 3 takeaways. If the real life Super Bowl shows 3 turnovers for the Chiefs and none for the Eagles, that Lombardi Trophy's coming down Broad Street. That's all I'm saying. But that's how Madden played this game out. Third down conversions, Eagles were 4 for 5 on third down. Chiefs were 3 for 4, so evenly matched there. Only the Eagles saw a fourth down where they went for it, and they got it 100% there as well. Red zone percentage, 75% for the Eagles, 3 out of their 4 drives versus Kansas City's 2 out of 3. All 5 of those red zone conversions were touchdowns, by the way. Miles Sanders led the team in rushing. Jalen Hurts led the team in rushing, 7 rushes for 96 yards and 2 scores. Miles Sanders on the ground, 10 carries for 59 yards, also with 2 scores. For the Chiefs, their leading runner was Isaiah Pacheco. I think it's how you say it. 3 rushes for 18 yards. Not a great day for him, with Michael Burton, the fullback, scoring the only touchdown for the running backs there. And then we also had, where is that last stat line? Here we go. Let's see here. Okay. So Juju Smith-Schuster led the rushing attack, 7 catches. It was a passing attack for the game, 7 passes, 65 yards, and that touchdown in garbage time. A.J. Brown had a quiet day, only 1 catch for 23 yards. Devonta Smith, the leading receiver for the Eagles, 3 catches for 29 yards. Again, they only had about 119 yards through the air. Most of their offense was on the ground, which in the balanced attack like ours makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, the result here is that the Eagles defeat the Chiefs 35-17 in the official Cheesesteaks and Controllers Madden 23 simulation, therefore taking the Lombardi Trophy for the second time in 5 years. Now, there is one caveat I'd like to add to all this. And as much as I love the Madden simulations every single year for the Super Bowl, there is something we kind of have to talk about. And that is Madden's track record. So they have predicted the Super Bowl for 19 years, right? They started it in 2004, I think was the first one. That was like the official prediction. But then, since then, they haven't done great, right? So let's look at Super Bowl 46. Let's go back to 46. So about 10 years of predictions here is what we're going to look at. They predicted that the Giants would beat New England, and the Giants did beat New England. They were right. The next year, they got it again. They said Baltimore would beat San Francisco in Super Bowl 47. Baltimore did beat San Francisco in Super Bowl 47. Super Bowl 48, they said Denver would beat Seattle. Seattle won 43-8. That did not happen. Super Bowl 49 is probably the best result Madden's official Super Bowl prediction has ever had, not only correctly predicting the winner, but correctly predicting the score. Madden said New England 28, Seattle 24, and that was indeed the score of Super Bowl 49. Just crazy good, spooky good, in fact, predicting skills there. Super Bowl 50, they said Carolina 24, Denver 20. It was Denver 24, Carolina 10. Sorry about that. And this is where things, I think, start to go wrong for Madden and why you shouldn't really put a lot of stock into these simulations, as fun as they are. Super Bowl 51, they said New England 27, Atlanta 24. New England did win 34-28 in overtime. The infamous 28-3 collapse by the Atlanta Falcons. Technically should have been wrong, Madden, but they saved you in the end there. Super Bowl 52, they said New England would beat the Eagles 24-20. We all know how that played out. Philadelphia 41, New England 33. Super Bowl 53, they said LA 30, New England 27. That was 13-3 in favor of New England. Super Bowl 54, they finally got back on the right track, predicting Kansas City would beat San Francisco, which they did. But they haven't gotten it right the last 2 years either. Kansas City 37, Tampa 27 for Super Bowl 55 was the prediction. 31-9 Tampa was the real score. 24-21 Cincinnati over LA last year was the prediction, with LA over Cincinnati being the actual result. So Madden in its entire lifetime across 19 years is, I believe, 11-8 in predicting the winner of the Super Bowl, with that one exact correct prediction in Super Bowl 49. But they are 1 for their last 5 and 2 for their last 7. Essentially, ever since predicting that exact score, 28-24 at Super Bowl 49, they've only gotten 2 of the 7 they've predicted correct. That is not ideal. Now, am I saying that the Madden curse has moved on from the cover art athlete to whoever it predicts in the Super Bowl? No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is there needs to be a slight grain of salt taken with these predictions. You cannot say that this simulation, I mean, obviously they try to be the most realistic simulation in football, but you cannot say Madden says the Eagles are going to win and go into Sunday thinking it's a shoo-in. That's not smart. I mean, it's not smart to think that anyway, but just all I'm saying is have a little fun with these simulations. If you're going to do some yourself between now and Sunday, just know that it's not gospel, and in real life, anything can happen. I personally am feeling good about an Eagles win. There are some factors that I think really play into our favor, but the teams are evenly matched. The graphic that went out about how they have the exact same record and scored the same amount of points on offense is telling. The fact that the betting line has been hovering around 2 points, 1.5 in favor of the Eagles for the entire 2 weeks is telling. These teams are evenly matched. The Eagles might be a little deeper, but Mahomes is a superstar, and Kelsey is one of the best tight ends I've ever seen. So it's going to be a toss-up. Just have fun. watch responsibly, enjoy the chicken wings, enjoy the adult beverage, take it all in. And if it results in a parade on Broad Street, I will be up there screaming with you. But if it doesn't, just remember, this was a team that was not supposed to do a dang thing this year. And yet, just like the Phillies in October, here we are watching our team in the championship, in the Super Bowl. And that is something that should be savored and appreciated. I know I am going to try and savor it as much as I can, just because my kiddos are now into it as well. I think Charlotte is saying EAGLES, Eagles, every chance she gets. Warms my heart. But I'm very much looking forward to this game. I hope you are too. And hopefully next week, when I load up episode number 126, I will start with a jubilant victory declaration that your Eagles are the Super Bowl 57 champions. Speaking of next week, big show next week, going from sports to something completely different from sports. Magic the Gathering, the long-running card game, just celebrated 30 years, is having their annual Magic Con right here in Philadelphia at the Pennsylvania Convention Center there on Broad and Arch next weekend, 17 to 19, and I will be doing a full preview show for episode number 126, have some interviews lined up, going to go through where the game is right now, where it's come from. Should be a fun time. That'll probably go up on either Thursday or early Friday morning before the con. Check it out. If there's anything else that comes up between now and then, I will definitely make you aware of it. But next week is MagicCon, and then we're heading right into PAX East in Boston. There may be a local contingent heading up to Boston to check out everything that's going on there. But that has been episode number 125 of the Cheese Sticks Controllers podcast, presented as always by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, and wherever you stream your podcasts. As I say every single week, if you're listening to these words, that means you got to the end of the show. And if you got to the end of the show, I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you have an even better week right behind it. Go Birds! And I will talk to you again next week with all of the latest and greatest in video games, esports, and, as next week goes, tabletop card games as well. Go Eagles! Fly Eagles fly! Go Birds! Talk to you next week. Goodbye! Go get 'em.